Today.
Set the weather. Set the weather. How long are you over for? No worries. Well, let's get going. Are you ready, Nikki?
Yeah, ready.
Right, are you recording?
Yeah.
Okay, so hi to everybody at home. Hi to you, Anne and Stella. Thanks for joining me. I'm an international guest from Singapore, so I hope you enjoy Glasgow and today's tour of Glasgow's Necropolis. Now, this is Craig's Da Vinci Code Tours, where I take the traditional walking tour and, like the film with a Da Vinci Code style twist, looking at the secret languages hidden in the art and architecture all around us. Have you seen the film or read the books at all?
Yeah.
You have? Are you fans?
She hasn't.
Oh, you haven't yet?
Yeah.
Maybe this tour will inspire you to actually go and see the movie. Now, you'll be aware the movie itself touches on a lot of secret hidden legends and myths in the art and architecture. Now, the first movie, the Da Vinci Code, touches on the St. Clair family and the myth with the St. Clair family being the Holy Grail, the lineage of Christ. Now, in this necropolis today, we have a lot of Freemasonry legends, we have a lot of Knights Templars references, we've got a member of the St. Clair family buried here as well, and lots of references to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. That's the Knights Templars Holy Church in Jerusalem. So we'll be touching on a lot of that. So just like the film, this tour actually touches on all the secret symbols and myths and legends hidden in the art and architecture. So if we just continue walking on, we'll continue into the Glasgow Necropolis. Now, the Glasgow Necropolis itself, it's spread over 37 acres and it's one of the world's largest Freemasonic symbols. Now, the whole of the necropolis is laid out as a metaphor to symbolise the journey Freemasons make through the fraternity of Freemasonry. Now, it was back in 2007, there was an international conference on the history of Freemasonry. This was held over in Edinburgh in the Freemasons Hall. Now, the patrons for the conference were the Grand Masters of Scotland, England and Ireland. There were over 200 international guests with 72 speakers. Now, one of these speakers was a Mr. Ronnie Scott. He's a historian. Now, it was Mr. Ronnie Scott that laid out that the whole of the necropolis clearly resembles a metaphor for the journey through Freemasonry. Now, as we're walking down here, we've just passed through the gates. The gates themselves we've just passed through, that's the first metaphor. If you were interested in joining Freemasonry, the fraternity, one of the first hurdles you would encounter is guarding the western gate. This means that the people that are in the fraternity of Freemasonry wouldn't let anybody in that would bring dishonour on the fraternity. So it symbolises only letting honourable people and people that are worthy and will do the craft goods, let's say, will be allowed to enter through the gates. Now, if we continue on a wee journey here, you see we're entering into the necropolis. Now, we're crossing over the bridge here. This bridge is actually known as the Bridge of Sighs. Have you ever been to Venice?
No.
One of the most famous Bridge of Sighs is over in Venice. But here in the UK, there's a less well-known Bridge of Sighs, and that's down in Cambridge University. Now, what's interesting is I'm going to show you the similar symbols that's put in the architecture in different areas of the country. Now, I'm going to refer to Glasgow's Necropolis, Glasgow Green, Paris, as well as the University of Cambridge. Now, just a wee bit of housekeeping. We've got as much time as you want, so if you want to stop for any pictures, just say to me, because if you turn around when we're crossing over the bridge, you'll get a beautiful view of the cathedral if you're interested in getting some pictures for that. Also as well, We're not in a hurry. We've got as much time as you would like. So if you do want to stop and look at anything and investigate, feel free to say to myself, okay? Now, the Bridge of Sighs here. This represents, this is the metaphor for passing from one existence into another. Now, this is a cemetery. So in death, it's very easy to understand moving from one existence to another, representing the journey from life to death. Now, in Freemasonry, this represents when you join the craft. Metaphorically speaking, when you join Freemasonry, it's moving from one existence into a higher existence. You may or may not be aware of some of the folklore in and around Masonry. With when you are going through the initiation, you will be blindfolded, and then the blindfold will be took off, and that symbolises bringing you into the light. We'll just stop here and let you get as many pictures as you like. It's beautiful. Now that's the John Knox statue up there on the highest point. That's where we will be ending the tour today. The John Knox statue right up there. Now, you may or may not be able to see the trees hiding it a wee bit there. That is a mausoleum of Major Archibald Douglas Monteith. I'll go into a wee bit more about who he is later. But the mausoleum, as you may or may not be able to see because of the trees, is circular in design. That again is representative of the round rotunda of the Church of the Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem. That is allegedly the site where Christ was crucified and then buried, and a very holy site in Christianity. And it was also one of the most holy, it was the holy church the Knights Templar used when they were in Jerusalem at the time of the Crusades. Now, as I said, I'm going to show you the similarities in the architecture between Glasgow and Cambridge. So if you go down to Cambridge University, they have a Bridge of Sighs crossing over the river. Looking down onto the Bridge of Sighs from the hill in Cambridge University is what's known as the Round Church. Again, the Round Church in Cambridge, that was built in the 13th century, and it was built to resemble the round rotunda of the Church of the Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem. So here in Glasgow and down in Cambridge, you both have a Bridge of Sighs and the Round Church. Now, separate locations, apparently with no connections, but I would argue that's the Masons putting some of their folklore, myths and legends into the art and architecture. Now, we're going to walk down to the lower terrace here, where we will see the headstone of the member of the St. Clair family. So our very own wee bit of the Holy Grail that's buried here in the Glasgow Necropolis. And we'll touch on a wee bit more about the entrance when we come back. So, we just walked over the Bridge of Sighs. The rain's off, isn't it? Thankfully. Can't come to Scotland and not get a bit of rain, even in the summer. So one of the things you'll notice as we're walking down here, and especially up on some of the higher terraces as well, is there's a lot of obelisks. This was a strong symbol used by Freemasons. It goes back to their interest in the mythology in and around ancient Egypt. The Egyptian reference to the obelisk is very obvious, and the Freemasons of the 18th and 19th century loved looking into the mythology in and around the ancient Babylonian culture, the ancient Egyptian culture, the ancient Greek culture, which is very self-evident if you look at a lot of the architecture, a lot of the columns and your front facades like the Pantheon in Greece. And there's a lot of references, maybe not so obvious to some, but if you've got the trained eye, to a lot of the art and architecture and gods and goddesses of ancient Greece. ancient Egypt and ancient Babylon. Now, here now you get a better view of the mausoleum of Major Archibald Douglas Monteith. It's beautiful. We will go up and have a closer look later on when we go up the hill onto the higher terraces. But again, it's built to resemble the Knights Templars, Church of the Holy Sepulchre, the round rotunda in Jerusalem. And we'll go into a wee bit more of some of the interesting facts about that later on. It is a beautiful. Now, we'll go down here. It's just a wee headstone I would love to show you here. Now, as you can, as we're walking down this hill, you will get a better view of the bridge of size that we just crossed over there. Now, originally when it was built, it was going over a burn. The street we see there today used to be the Mullen-Dinar burn, and it was culverted over not long after the Glasgow Necropolis was actually built. And as you can see, it's very picturesque. You've got the bridge of size. It's got the main arch is over 60 feet in diameter, and a beautiful view of the second arch you can see over there. The second arch you can see there, that actually used to be a walkway for people to see cars to come underneath it. Yeah, but when the burn itself was culverted over, that didn't get used and they just fenced it off. So the headstone for, just walk around here. Now, this is our very own wee bit, this is our very own piece of the Holy Grail and the Knights Templar legend in Glasgow Necropolis. This gentleman's name was Archibald, there we can see it there, Right Honourable Brother Archibald St Clair Ruthven, who served the Grand Lodge of Masons in the Republic of Texas. So this was before Texas was a state. I don't know if you remember, Texas used to be a republic before it was actually brought into the original 13 states. And he was also the Grand Secretary of the Grand Lodge of Texas from 1847 to 1858. He died while he was here on a visit to his native country. And he died of disease. He was buried here in an unmarked grave. And over 100 years after his death, that's when the Grand Lodge of Texas and the Grand Lodge of Glasgow, as well as some other Masonic bodies, came together to put this headstone here to commemorate him. Now, interesting thing about the Archibald, he was actually an active Knights Templar as well. The Knights Templar is a worldwide global movement, only really started to resurface in the 18th and 19th century. He was one of the very early participants in this Knights Templar movement that was kind of getting rediscovered worldwide. Since the Knights Templar were kicked out of Christendom and weren't too friendly with the Pope and the French king at the time, they didn't really operate in the open, let's say. And it was only later on in the 18th and 19th century that groups calling themselves Knights Templars started to re-emerge. Now, we'll just walk back up to the entrance and I will continue with a wee bit of the legends in and around the St Clair family. Now, the itself, the Da Vinci Code, touches on the St Clair family being of the lineage of Jesus. Whether you believe that or not, it's up to yourselves. I think the mystery is sometimes better than actually knowing. You know, it's sometimes the journey is better than the destination. So, the St Clair family themselves are inherently linked with Rosslyn Chapel. Rosslyn Chapel, again, made famous by the movie. That's the chapel over in Edinburgh. It's synonymously linked with the Knights Templar people say the St. Clair family is the bloodline of the Knights Templar. Now, if you look at the lineage of the St. Clair family, you can trace the family back to the days of Robert the Bruce, when he was king. Now, as legend would have it, when Robert the Bruce died, it was the St. Clair family and the Douglas family that were entrusted with taking his heart back to the Holy Land. Now, apparently they didn't complete the journey. They had a few problems on the way, but it shows that the families that were closest to Robert the Bruce upon his death were the Douglas family and the St. Clair family. We have a member of the St. Clair family buried here, and the mausoleum up there is Major Archibald Douglas Monteith, who again traces his lineage back to the Douglas family, which is our very own wee part of, well, there's Robert the Bruce's two most closest family buried in Glasgow's Necropolis. Now, I'll go into a wee bit more about Major Archibald Douglas Monteith when we get to the top of the hill and we're looking at his mausoleum close up. Now, as I mentioned, there was in 2007 an international conference on the history of Freemasonry, where one of the speakers was talking about that this is a large, the whole landscape is laid out to be a metaphor for the journey in Masonry. Now, you may or may not noticed that the entrance itself is laid out from west to east. So you enter in the west, and you're travelling east. Now, east represents the rising sun. That's the light, and the west represents the dark. So as you're entering from and you're travelling from west to east, it was allowing Freemasons not only to travel from the dark to the light in their journey through the lodge, but they were also able to do that in death. So a lot of the rituals that they went through and what those rituals symbolised, they can now do that journey in their death as well as when they were living. Now, Glasgow's Necropolis was actually opened in 1833. Are you familiar with the Père Lachaise Cemetery Necropolis over in Paris? Jim Morrison is buried there, and Oscar Wilde, I believe, as well as a host. I think somebody told me Mozart was and Beethoven are buried there as well the other day. Now, the Père Lachaise in Paris was open just after the 1800s. It was commissioned by Napoleon, and who was rumoured to be a Freemason at the time. And the architect behind the Père Lachaise was a famous French Freemason as well. So the Père Lachaise is laid out in the exact same way as the Glasgow Necropolis. I love going onto Google Earth and looking at all the way the towns and cities are all laid out, especially towns and cities that were built in and around the time when Freemasonry was at its height. I believe you can see a lot of their myths and legends getting incorporated in the way they lay out their towns and cities. It's open to speculation, but again, that's half the enjoyment sometimes, you know, it's like the bit of mystery and bewilderment. So the whole of the necropolis is laid out from west to east, representing the journey from the light to the dark. You pass through the gates, which is a metaphor for being allowed into the fraternity. You cross over the bridge of sighs, which is a metaphor for passing from one existence to another. Now, this amazing structure here originally was meant to be the entrance. Now, as you can clearly see, it's no longer an entrance, that's the entrance there. The idea behind this was to be subterranean catacombs. At the time of the building of the necropolis, there was a problem with body snatching. So the rich and famous used to get their bodies buried very deep underground, less likely for the body snatchers to get a hold of them. Now, there was a couple of contributing factors as to why they didn't actually turn this into the entrance. There was a new law passed which put an end to body snatching. It means that medical, at the time there was an Atomy Act that was passed which allowed the bodies to be used for medical science. Also, at the time, there was technical difficulties with the tunnels. A lot of the tunnels started caving in on themselves, and the idea behind the subterranean entrance was to take you underground and to sort of come out at the top in an entrance. Technically, it was just way too difficult. There was no longer the necessity for burying bodies so deep in the ground with the new laws that had been passed. So today, it's one of Glasgow's fanciest sheds. That's where they keep all the grass cutting equipment and all the gardening equipment. Okay. So as grand as it looks, it's basically just a garage. Right. Now, what it does represent though in the Masonic journey, as you can see here, if you were coming into the necropolis, you would be passing through the two pillars. Now, the two pillars actually represent Boaz and Jachin. These symbols are used in the tarot as well as Freemasonry. They represent the two pillars that were on the porch of Solomon's Temple, the first temple in Jerusalem. So a very important symbol in Freemasonry. If you go and look into a lot of Freemasonry symbolism as well, what's technically known as tracing boards sometimes, it's kind of used, symbols are used to tell a story. A ritual's a telling of a story. A lot of the rites in Freemasonry tend to be tales of moral tales, right, wrong, that sort of an idea. So with Boaz and Jachin, it refers to the Solomon's Temple in Jerusalem. This is a very important, iconic building in Freemasonry. They became obsessed with it with the mass producing of the Bible and people's literate levels coming up. People were able to read a lot more. So in the King James Bible, what you'll find is a lot of references to the dimensions of Solomon's Temple. And one of the most famous architects involved in the design of the Glasgow's necropolis was Alexander Greek Thomson. Now, he made 3 churches in Glasgow as well, and what he'd done is he incorporated the dimensions of Solomon's Temple into the Christian churches that he built. He was also responsible for the building of the Glasgow necropolis. He was also a Freemason. He was a member of the Grand Lodge of Glasgow. And as you can tell by his name, Alexander Greek Thomson, a lot of his architecture, which you can clearly see, showed his passion for the ancient Greek forms of architecture, as well as a lot of the myths and legends and the gods and goddesses. Now, the 2 pillars here that you would pass through when you were coming into the necropolis represent Jacob and Boaz, sorry. And yeah, definitely worth getting a good few pictures of that. Well, good. Now we'll continue to walk up this hill. Now, if you look into a lot of Freemason symbolism, you'll see a lot of references. It's kind of biblical in a way to Jacob's ladder. You'll see a lot of references like triangle structures and that idea of progressing and climbing up the levels, which you can clearly see we'll be doing now as we climb up to the top of the hill. So, Jacob's ladder represents the principle and the metaphor for the great chain of being. That symbolises the hierarchical ordering of the universe. A way of explain this is in the analogy of a beehive. It's the principle that we're all part of something greater than ourselves. It doesn't matter if you're the worker bee or you're the queen bee, you're equally as important as part of the hive as a whole. So it's the idea that we're all in it together. We all have our, regardless of whether you're a worker bee or you're the queen bee, we're all equally as important to coming together and making the hive thrive, let's say. Now, the necropolis itself has over 50,000 burials, with over 3,500 monuments. Now, apparently, every burial is actually recorded in the Mitchell Library. I don't know if you've been to the Mitchell Library at all. So if you were ever interested in doing research about the who is and who isn't buried here, whether there's any old family members or any relations or anything, there's full records available to the public in Mitchell Library. So anybody ever wanting to do any research on the Glasgow necropolis, Mitchell Library is a very good place to start. Now, as I mentioned, we are now climbing what symbolically resembles Jacob's ladder. Clearly a lot of biblical references there with Jacob's ladder as well, but in Freemasonry terms and mythology, it represents kind of the hierarchical ordering of the universe, where we're all an important part of something greater than ourselves. And in your journey through Freemasonry, the idea is to try and become a better man, a better person, to improve yourself, to try and do the right thing, be more moral, and that represents climbing the ladder. And when you're representing climbing the ladder, they see it as getting closer to God, getting closer to the top. So what we're going to do now is go and have a lovely wee look at Major Archibald Douglas Monteith's Mausoleum.
So for people to be qualified to be director, is there any qualification nowadays?
No, this anybody can get buried here if you've got the money. Now, all the graves here are like non-denominational. They're all typically Christian. There's a small Jewish section just down there. I don't think there's no longer any Jewish burials here. There was, when it was initially open, there was a small